Hey, what's up guys? Main back here with another video. Sorry for the delay, but I want to get something out here for you as we have FOMC tomorrow and it's time for them to cut rates. We basically have like a 99% probability, I believe, when I last looked at the odds, of a 25 basis point rate cut. So down from 4 to 3.5. So we've seen this kind of telegraph for a while now, and I've talked about this in prior videos. Right at first it was like, well, maybe they aren't going to cut rates, and now it's back to, oh, of course they're going to cut rates. And we're already starting to see the narrative slowly on Twitter start to change from bearishness to maybe some hope. It's still early, right? Sentiment, I think, still on aggregate is relatively floored, right? So if you look at crypto, we're still down massively from the October all-time high. We hit as low as 80K, and we're now just starting to correct. If you look at this thing on the daily chart, and I've talked about this in prior videos as well, this is so far the most bullish it's looked, right, in the past few months by far. However, we're still well within the scope of a downtrend on all high time frames, daily and above, right? So if you go down to the 4-hour chart, sure, we broke this structural high here, finally. Up until very recently, as like 6-7 days ago, we hadn't even made a higher high on the H4. Now we've made a higher high on these lower time frames, but on the daily, right, as much as this is looking bullish, you got to remember, this is our daily high and this is our daily swing low. So this entire move up very well could just be corrective and lead to a lower high on the daily. It could go all the way up to 105, still creating a lower high on the daily and trading lower. So I've been telling you guys my plan basically out of the bottom here is I didn't want to puke into the lows. My belief was that we're going to get an end of the year rally. We've started to see this, and I'm hoping to be able to exit the remainder of my spot Bitcoin above 100K, maybe above 110, maybe a small outside chance above a new all-time high. And what we need to see for that is the sentiment, in my opinion, to stay bearish as long as possible. The longer people remain bearish here and the higher this pushes, the better. I want people saying that this rally is going to fail, right? That this is just going to be a lower high. We're already in a bear market. I want that to be said, because the longer those people are continuing to short this, the more fuel there is for price to continue to trade higher. Okay, so this has been a decent start. As you guys know, we've taken some great trades in here, right? We got a long off here, we got a short here, and then I posted about this long in here on Telegram. So obviously if you're following the Haven as well, but we had this, we had the sweep long down here that we took. We had the short up here, we had another short here, and then we had this balanced price range, which also gave us a sweep that I posted about. So nice to get some winning trades back in the mix, especially after eating shit for the end of October and most of November. I think I took 7 trades between October and November and lost 6 of them and only won 1. I took 6 longs, all losses in a downtrend, who would have thought? And I took 1 short that ended up being a winning trade up here at around 115. Got a couple of back-to-back wins here, which is nice to finally get back on the right side of things, as we are still very much in a range, and my system does very well when we have these kind of really nicely defined ranges where we can look for shorts at the range high, longs at the range low, shorts at the range high, longs at the mid-range. That's been nice. So sentiment still relatively floored, right? And that I want to see that. But what I also want to see happen as we trade higher is I want people to start buying in to this QE narrative. And we're starting to see this on Twitter today. Now I'm going to bring up a tweet from someone named Gammy Chan. I like Gamma Chan. I think he's a nice guy. I just think that he's wrong here, and I'll explain why. So the 4-year cycle is perhaps the most widely held belief in crypto. So I've talked to you guys about this a ton in videos where I believe that the 4-year cycle that I'm describing, I gotta zoom in so you can see my handsome face better, that the way I describe it and the way that I've learned it, akin to Bob Lucas, right, guys like him, is a time-based cycle for markets in which we see these 4-year cycles, which can then be broken down into monthly, weekly, and daily cycles to basically, right, all you're trying to do with the cycle theory here is, see, I've reverse flashbanged you guys, this is new, is you're not trying to time price levels, okay? You're trying to time the peaks and valleys. So you're trying to time cycle tops and cycle bottoms, cycle tops and cycle bottoms. And then you use TA in conjunction with this to actually find where these levels might form, okay? But it's a time-based system purely with the purpose of identifying when cycle lows and cycle highs should form, okay? It is not the 4-year cycle that I think he's referring to and that you see most people on crypto Twitter refer to, which is, oh my God, price bottoms every 3 years and then, tops it, or it goes up for 3 years, then it bottoms, a year later, and that's your 4-year cycle, or the halving cycle, tops a year after halving, or the business cycle, or the liquidity cycle. Those are not what I view the 4-year cycle as. My 4-year cycle is time-based, and I don't think most people agree with it. I already see people start to say what Gamma Chan is saying. I think up until we saw the top in October, everyone was already saying the 4-year cycle is dead, right? I told you guys a year ago in October that we most likely top in Q4 of 2025 or Q1 of 2026. I said that a year ago, based on my version of cycle theory. And as we got into Q4 of 2025 and made a new all-time high, everyone was ready to declare the 4-year cycle dead. And then they were praying for it to come back because they didn't want it to be over yet. And now as we're starting to pump, we're already starting to see people, Gamma Chan here. We saw Raul Paul mention the idea of, oh, we're in a 5-year cycle now. I want this, okay? I want this because this allows me to be contrarian as we go up, and everyone was bearish at the bottom. I said, I'm not puking into the lows here. Now, as we trade higher, I want people to say, you know what, everyone thinks it's a 4-year cycle. We're just going to keep pumping, right? And everyone's going to be offside. And then they're going to do rate cuts and stimmies, and QT is ended. And now we're going to start QE, and there's a new Fed chair, and everyone's going to be fucked, and we're going to pump for all of 2026. I love this narrative because as we push higher, I want more and more people to fade this and think that it's bearish. And then as maybe we get above 100, now all of a sudden more people are starting to think like Gamma Chan, right? And then when everyone is on board that train, we get the real rug pull. And we get what I believe is going to happen for 2026, which is it's going to be a bearish year. I've said this countless times before. I don't know why my pen just stopped working there. That's insane. I've said this countless times before. I think 2026 is going to be bearish. Could I be wrong? Yeah. I think the start of 2026 could be bullish, but I ultimately think the majority of 2026 is going to be bearish for markets, stocks included. I think we're going to see a major pullback in equities. I think we could see the S&P trade back into the 5,000s. I think we could see Bitcoin trade down into the 70, 60, even 50,000s next year. What I'm interested in is whether or not this is the top, or do we have one more push, or is this going to be, this is the top and we're getting a lower high. Right now, I've told you guys before, right, I see kind of two scenarios, right? I see scenario one is, new all-time high. I see scenario two as, a lower high. That's too high. Let's say a lower high, right? But either way, both of these scenarios end in us dumping in 2026. And I think we bottom, right, in late 2026. I think this time next year is when you want to buy the bottom on markets for the next cycle based on the time-based theory and based on TA as well. We have that yearly order block on Bitcoin right around 50K, right? So how nice would it be if a year from now, we could buy at 50K Bitcoin or 60K Bitcoin? So that's lining up time and price. Now, of course, I could be wrong, right? Of course, I could be wrong. Anything can happen, right? But so far, I'm liking what we're seeing narratively. And this stuff that we're seeing from guys like Gamma Chan, from Raul Paul, I think that way of thinking, that line of thought will continue to promulgate. It will grow. More people will do it. It will metastasize as we trade higher. And that is the juice, the fuel that we need, I think, to really get out as high as possible because I'm interested in selling my spot as high as possible here. Over 100K would be amazing. I think we're coming into this key downtrend line here. If we're able to get above 98, I think that opens up the door to here. Remember, this is your daily range high right around 107. So this would be lower high territory, pretty primo. If we're able to get above here, I think that increases the odds of a new all-time high, but I still put the odds on a lower high, greater than 50%. I think I said, I was 80-20, now maybe I'm 70-30. I'm still in that kind of 70-30 range. I would really like to see us get above and make a new higher high on the daily before I give it a really solid shot at new all-time highs. But from a narrative perspective, that's what we want to see. I want people fading this, thinking it's going to fail, thinking it's over, and then as it trades higher, I want more and more people starting to say, you know what, maybe up only for 2026, QE, stimmies, all that stuff. I think most people do not understand policy. Like they don't understand Fed policy, okay? When QE happens, okay? When QE happens, oopsie daisy, sorry about that. What happened there? Okay, when QE happens, guys, generally, we want to see the market be in like a massive downturn, in a recession. Now, whether or not you believe the stock market is already technically in a recession, which I do, okay? I think that this is fugazi. I do not think that this is real. The market is right at all-time highs. We're in a blow-off top. But I think in terms of actual economic data points, we are close to or already coming into a recession. The jobs data is bad. We're losing data. They're not releasing data, okay? The data that's coming out is getting adjusted drastically in the wrong direction. And I think that basically what is happening here is Trump and the powers that be are doing everything in their power to continue this as long as possible going into the midterm year next year, to pump the stock market as long as they fucking can, because Trump views the stock market as a barometer for his success, okay? That's what I think is happening. I don't believe that this is going to end well. I think that this ends with something like this, right? Like I do think that this ends in a massive correction and people are going to realize we've actually been trending towards a recession. And this is a much more appropriate environment for actual quantitative easing. QT ending does not mean that QE is starting, okay? It just means that QT is ending, okay? QT has been happening as rates have been high. QE happens when rates are low, okay? QE happens when the economy is in a recession and there's like a crisis and rates are already low. This is QE, okay? This is QE. You can call, they're gonna say, oh, it's stealth QE, or we had QE during COVID. I think COVID's a bit of a misnomer. It was kind of a black swan, right? But the point of QE is to stimulate the economy because cutting rates is no longer working. Rates are high right now and they're still actively cutting them and the economy is all-time high. So to me, it doesn't make sense for them to do QE right now. Just because they're injecting some liquidity, billions of dollars, it's not equivalent to the trillions of dollars that they've invested into the economy or injected, into the economy during previous stints of QE. That's going to happen, in my opinion, when rates are lower and the economy is actually in a crisis, not at all-time high when rates are still at 4, maybe getting cut 25 basis points tomorrow, most likely to 3.75. So again, I think most people just don't understand this kind of stuff. And so when you see posts like Gamma Chan where it's like, oh, we're going to have QE, the markets are just going to continue going up. They're not going to start the QE if the markets are at all-time high. It doesn't make any sense and rates are high. They use QE when cutting rates no longer works because they're already super low. They're at 2%, 1%, very low, 0. Okay, and then then now what do they do to stimulate the economy? That's when they do the crazy money printing, right? Or something crazy like COVID. So again, I want that narrative to happen and I want it to be coupled with price. So what I'm seeing right now with Bitcoin, very simply, is we're coming back to this range high here. Right now, we're sweeping out this high. This very well could reverse down, okay? So we've got FOMC tomorrow. There's most likely going to be volatility, but we are kind of trending in the right direction. What I want to see is this downtrend line, as you guys know, break. Okay, I want to see this downtrend line break because this would be a sign that the daily trend is changing. I drew this out before, right? Before we had broken this, and I gave you guys my explanation, right? I said, you know, you have your primary trend, and then the trend gets more aggressive. Okay, then we had this more aggressive trend, and then we had the super aggressive trend. Right? And the idea here is, right, as you're trending up or down, you have kind of your primary trend, and then it gets steeper and steeper. And then once this parabolic down move, this is just an inverse parabolic move. Once this parabolic down move breaks, like if you're used to looking at altcoin charts, right? Well, this is a parabola, right? We are going up, then up a lot, and then up like crazy. And once this parabola breaks, this inverted parabola, it usually goes from trend line to trend line. Right? So we broke this super steep downtrend, then we traded to this one. We've now broken this less steep one. Now we're going to trade to this one. And to me, this primary trend, which denotes basically the move from all-time high to the low here, breaking this would be the first clue, and it also lines up very nicely here with the yearly open. Let me just pop that back on. We have that right there. What happened to my range? There we go. We have that back on there, okay, the yearly open. Above here, I think would give us pretty strong clues that we're gonna go at least to 100 and then maybe higher. But this is a critical level. So even though the daily range is here, the daily downtrend line is this. So a clue that we might be actually able to break the daily trend, even though structurally it's all the way up here, would be breaking this daily downtrend line first. And so we're coming up to this point. I've been talking about this point is the area to challenge. I thought maybe it was here. We sold off again. Now this kind of intersection is coming at the yearly open. Either way, we need to see this line broken for the bulls if we want to see a move above 100 and ultimately maybe to 105, 110. Okay? And as we trade higher, above 90, above the yearly open, which is around 93,800, 98 is my next key level. Above there, 106 is the next key level. To me, between 100 and 106, high odds of a lower high. We also have that weekly bearish order block starting right around the 106, 107 level. So ultimately, like this is the lower high zone. Somewhere between 100 and here, okay? High odds. Above 106 and we make a higher high on the daily, I now would shift my odds of an all-time high from being like 30% or lower to maybe 40 or 50%. But still, it's low, less than half. I think a lower high is much higher odds for the time being. That being said, the more people start thinking like Gamma Chan, the better. Now, do we know if this low is even in yet? It looks good for now, right? But right now, like on the 2-day here, even on the 3-day, like this is a sweep. Okay? That's a sweep right there on the 3-day. So there's a world where like this low isn't even in. And it could be like prior high time frame lows, all of which had a weekly sweep. Ideally, just from a timing perspective and how equities look, I don't really want us to go back down there. And I think if we break this kind of up-sloping trend line that we have here, right? These series of higher lows, that's all I'm using to demonstrate the higher lows is just a line. That's bad. And I think that maybe that means that this is the lower high, right? So I would much rather see us get another leg up, right? And then correct, and then another leg up, right? And then continue this series of consecutive higher lows, okay? But still early to tell. I've given you the levels I'm watching here. We're coming into resistance. We're at the range high. We're at the yearly open. We have this downtrend line here. This is a big zone that the bulls need to conquer. And then we can start talking about 100K. But we're just taking this level to level. And on signs of weakness, if there's a reason for us to eject, that's what I'm gonna do because the prevailing trend is still down, but we're seeing some signs along with the narrative stuff that I expounded on earlier, okay? So that's that. Quickly, I'm gonna touch on 3 more things. First up, I'm gonna touch on, and then I gotta go to the gym. Stocks, we had that big downtrend line break. Now we've swept out this high. I said, I think this needs to correct, whether it be through time-based consolidation, which is just sideways, before another leg higher or an actual pullback. With FOMC tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if during the speech we get some language from Powell like, hey, QE maybe isn't coming as soon as you think, whatever, it spooks the market, and this gives us this bit of a correction that we need before the next leg higher. But how this looks, I still think over 7,000 is coming, which is also why I think Bitcoin still has higher to go. I next want to touch real quickly on USTD dominance. We're still seeing rejections here from this key zone. So I want to see this roll over, right? We want to see this trade lower if Bitcoin is going to go higher, if crypto is going to go higher. Same thing for the dollar. I want to see this thing continue to roll over. I don't want to see this push back inside this range. I want this to roll over and ultimately even maybe go down here as crypto and equities continue to trade higher going into the end of the year, going into the start of 2026. Last but not least, I want to talk about Ethereum. I posted this chart way back at the end of November. I said, hey, we're in a weekly order block here and we've just put in a sweep. This is due for some sort of correction. And lo and behold, ETH is up 3 weeks in a row versus Bitcoin, and it's now trying to reclaim its yearly open. You go look at ETH USD, it is now actually back at its yearly open, similar to Bitcoin. ETH might actually be green on the year before Bitcoin is. Similarly to Bitcoin, you can draw out these kind of trend lines here. We have this more aggressive sloping one, right? That's breaking. Well, where's the next high? It's confluent with that key $4,000 level, which has nuked us basically every time we've been there for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's a key resistance level that I'm watching here up into this weekly bearish order block, 4,000. And by the time we get there, we might even be converging with this trend line. I don't know, but this is a key area for ETH. And looking at how ETH BTC looks, we could even see a world where ETH actually makes a new all-time high and Bitcoin makes a lower high. Wouldn't that be crazy? It seems nuts, but it's actually possible. And it's happened in the past, right? So you can go look at prior cycles here, right? So this is November of 2021, right? So, or I want to go back one actually here. So ETH, right? ETH made, I'm going to go a little bit lower here on Bitcoin. And I'll go a little bit lower on ETH as well. Okay, so Bitcoin here made a lower high, made its high, a dump, and then the recovery, right, made a lower high. While ETH made its new all-time high. So what is ETH BTC doing here? Obviously, it's outperforming. We could see something similar where Bitcoin is in the process of topping. It has a big lower high rally. Maybe that's what we're in right now. And during that period of time, ETH rips face and makes a new all-time high. Maybe it goes to 6K or something. I don't know. It's too early to tell. But for now, ETH BTC looks good. If it gets back above its yearly open, which it's basically doing right now, this could run. And if this runs along with Bitcoin doing what I think it could do, which is maybe it pulls back a little, and then we get more continuation to the upside here, this could lead to a significant rally on ETH, as well as Bitcoin going up, as well as stocks getting that next leg higher. And then maybe this is where that lower high forms on Bitcoin and ETH has made a higher high, or maybe ETH caps out at 4,000. We don't know. It's too early to tell. I'm not trying to predict 5 moves out. For now, it's one at a time. Things are culminating in a way that I like, but we got to be patient here. We're still below the yearly open. We're still just testing this range high here, and we've not broken it yet. Get above here, then we can talk about 100K. From there, then we can talk about maybe even higher. So big day tomorrow. It's finally time for some more rate cuts. Let's see what Powell has to say. Let's see how the market reacts. And let's just continue to take this level to level. All right, guys, I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you all have a fantastic day. See ya.